I've learned more about human behavior, writing copy and studying the greats of direct response and reading Brian's books and studying after Brian's work than I have ever in my formal education, getting a graduate degree. Human behavior doesn't change.
No.
I don't care what's going on in society. I don't care that we have smartphones now. I don't care that we have the internet. Human behavior does not change. It's ingrained in our DNA. Today, discover the ultimate strategy for making your marketing and advertising even more effective so you can get clients now and make your business more profitable than ever. I'm Ken Newhouse. Building a profitable business isn't only about generating leads and driving sales. It's about who we are and what we're made of. It's about finding the most effective methods to persuade, inspire, and ignite the imagination of others so you can succeed in business. If you're a member of the new breed of entrepreneur, I invite you to join the quest as we reveal the newest and most effective methods you can use to get clients now. You know, it's often been said that marketing isn't everything, it's the only thing. I agree with that. And while that might sound like I only care about selling and making money, the opposite is true. When you're engaged in marketing your business, it's important to understand what you're doing at the deepest level and to act with integrity and purpose. And when you can do that, your work becomes a vehicle for bringing positive change into the lives of the people you serve. But let me be clear. It doesn't matter if your product or service saves lives, transforms businesses, heals relationships, or just makes you outrageously wealthy. It cannot and will not make an ounce of difference to anyone until you decide to aggressively sell it within the boundaries you determine are right for your business. Today's episode is going to teach you how to sell aggressively without ever losing sight of the people you are selling to or compromising the respect and care they deserve. Today's episode is about direct response marketing, which is measurable marketing in any medium. While direct mail was the medium where I started learning about direct response marketing, I cringe when I talk to people who mistakenly believe that direct response marketing is only about direct mail. Today's episode is not about general advertising or what people like my guest today call the Mad Men model. Advertising that builds brand awareness and maybe evokes an emotional response, but has no way for the prospective client to actually respond to your ad, or worse, doesn't allow for the accurate tracking of the response. With most general advertising, you can't measure the effectiveness of your ads because there's no way to measure whether the client takes an action as a result of the ad. Direct response marketing, on the other hand, is all about measurability and therefore accountability. It doesn't matter what medium we're talking about, and it certainly doesn't matter if we're talking about marketing offline like with direct mail or online like email or Facebook ads. All the advertising you pay for, regardless of the medium, should be measurable, which is why direct response marketing is so powerful. It is the only way to get a specific return on your investment because every time you run a campaign, there has to be some way to measure it. Whether it's including a phone number, an email address, or a web address to respond to, there must be some way to measure the response to the ad. Having some kind of response device with every marketing message you send in any medium, one that enables you to measure effectiveness and profitability, is the only way to know if your marketing is really working for the people in your target audience. I'm Ken Newhouse, your host, and I want to welcome you to episode 385 of the Get Clients Now podcast. My guest today, Brian Kurtz, a living legend in the world of direct response marketing. Kurtz is the author of the Amazon #1 bestselling book, Over Deliver, Build a Business for a Lifetime by Playing the Long Game of Direct Response Marketing. Now, as you probably already know, Kurtz worked closely with over a half dozen of the greatest copywriters and marketers that have ever lived, including people like Eugene Schwartz, Gary Benzavinga, the late Clayton Makepeace, and many, many others that you'll hear about on today's episode. And over the last 36 years, Kurtz has earned the reputation for helping coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, and professionals become better marketers and copywriters. His clients include legends, listen to this, his clients include legends like John Carlton, Frank Kern, mean old Dan Kennedy, and many of the internet's greatest marketing geniuses I simply don't have time to list. So if you're ready, let's get started with the recent interview I did with direct marketing legend, Brian Kurtz. All right, so Brian, it's awesome to have you on the show today. I have to say, this is probably one of my most favorite interviews that I've ever done, and I'm not saying that to stroke your ego or anything else.
I'll tell you, that puts the pressure on because now I can't disappoint. But I'm really pleased to be here too. You really obviously you care so much about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and it showed in the preparation, in the setup of the call of the interview, and I really appreciate that. And so I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm really stoked that you're here. And Simpson actually told me to give you a really hard time. Speaking of Craig Simpson, your co-author, he'll be on a following show. But I am sure there's a listener or two in my audience who isn't familiar with all the work you've done with yourself, the people that you've worked with in the direct response marketing world. So if you could take 2 or 3 minutes, give us your backstory, kind of bring us up to speed of where you are now, where you came from, who you've worked with, get us started in the right direction.
Yeah, so I started in direct marketing in 1981, the day Ronald Reagan was shot. That was my first day at Boardroom, which was a company that fairly simple model. We published newsletters and books, mostly for consumers, and it was just an iconic direct marketing business. I didn't know that when I got there in 1981. I got a job as the assistant list manager. So what that meant was that Boardroom published newsletters and books, newsletters meaning that there wasn't advertising in them. So you had to make money on the newsletters themselves, on selling subscriptions. So the most valuable piece of data or asset would be our mailing list. And the list of subscribers and book buyers were all affluent executives who bought through the mail, direct mail at the time. There was no internet in 1981. I hope you know that. And so I was basically representing Boardroom's lists in the marketplace of direct mail. And I didn't realize it at the time because it was just a job. I mean, I wanted to get into the company and I worked really hard to get any job in the company because I heard a lot about it. But whatever job came up is the one I took. And it was this list management job. And looking back on that, which will give you a good perspective of where I am now, is that it was all about the list and the audience. Because most lists back then in the 80s, if you had a magazine or a book buyer list or you had any kind of list, a fundraising list, you would give it to what they call a list manager who would represent your list with other mailers and they would rent your list. Boardroom happened to manage its list in-house. And so that's the job I got. So I just walked into it and it was just the world just opened up to me in a way that was incredible because it was all about understanding marketing from the audience standpoint. And just fast forward to today and the book that Craig and I did, which he can talk about on his interview, but it's called The Advertising Solution. And I did a presentation once on all of those copywriters who we profiled, David Ogilvy, Gary Halbert, Gene Schwartz. Any quote you get from them is always about lists and they're copywriters because they knew that the list was the most important thing. Because if they had a good list and an appropriate list, their copy would sing much better with that list. And so they could write great copy for any list, but if they had a really solid list writing copy for, it made their job a lot easier. And I realized that in the years that followed. But going back to my roots, starting in the list business was like the most fortunate thing, and I fell into it. And so that's where I started. And after about 10 years of running the list department at Boardroom, I started getting involved in all the marketing end. And, I started getting involved with all the copywriters who wrote for us, for our mailing, our promotions that either went out for books or newsletters. And I just learned so much on the shoulders of some of the greatest direct marketers who've ever lived. We had consultants in direct mail named Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman. I'm sure a lot of your listeners never heard of them, but Gordon Grossman was the architect of the Reader's Digest. Dick Benson was probably the smartest guy ever in direct mail. And, people like that. And then also the copywriters, Gary Bensavenga, if you've heard of him, Gene Schwartz, if you've heard of him, Jim Russ. We had an internal copywriter who's a legend named Mel Martin. And then there was people like Clayton Makepeace and more recently, David Deutsch and Paris Lampropoulos. And I got to work with all these people. And that was also just like being in that position. Now I took advantage of it. Don't get me wrong. But, being placed, it's like you're placed in this position in this direct marketing. I wouldn't even say a factory. It was a direct marketing college called Boardroom with all of these professors. And I'm getting my PhD, figuratively, in direct marketing, learning from all of these people. And what a blessing, and then, being able to take that into a 34-year career at Boardroom where we took the business from somewhere around 5 million when I got there to as high as 157 million, and that involved getting into infomercials and online, of course, and everything that is involved in any kind of marketing. But it was a beautiful transition. And it didn't go from 5 million to 157 million because of me, but I was running it with Marty Edelston, who was the founder. And we just took it to incredible heights by just paying attention, focusing on the fundamentals of direct marketing, working with, great lists, great offers, great copywriters. And it was an amazing run. And that was 34 years. I mean, I never looked back. And then for the last 6 years, I've got a company called Titans Marketing. And it's based on what Jay Abraham told me. In my book, Over Deliver, my second book, Jay Abraham wrote the foreword. And Jay Abraham, he's one of the great, thinkers in direct marketing. And he said to me on all the time, he still says it to me. He says, if you've done it, you have an obligation, even a moral obligation, to teach it. And so for the next 34 years, my mission is to teach everything I've learned, but also to be a student. Because, while I run mastermind groups for all levels of marketers and copywriters, I also am in other mastermind groups that I pay to be in, and I pay a lot of money to be in them, somewhere well over $100,000 a year to be in them. And I'm not the smartest person in any of those rooms because I'm still a student as well. So I'm teaching everything I've learned, but, everything is this is the best time ever in the history of the world to be a marketer. And so with, the technological wizards out there and all the things we can do in digital marketing and email marketing and, doing launches and doing all the great funnels and everything that I just have to be a sponge and be a student in all of that. But having that fundamental, knowledge for 40 years has helped me understand it a lot better. And then the best thing is that I've got my ticket punched for those rooms because when they invite me into these masterminds that I don't belong in, but I've got a golden ticket because I have all this experience and I'm willing to share it and they want to hear it, but I want to hear from them. I want to hear what they have to offer. So having a golden ticket into any room I want in the marketing industry has also been a blessing. So my career has just been one blessing after another, and I've taken advantage of it in the best ways. And that's been, 40 years in direct marketing.
A lot of it you put in your book. Obviously, we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But one of the questions I like to ask, I'm going to get to in just a second. Something digging at me, I have to know. Of all those famous people, you mentioned Schwartz and Makepeace and Benzovic. Just all these people that I have studied immensely for a long time. They're in my swipe files. I have as much as I can get. Haven't met any of them personally. They've definitely made an impact on me. But of all those people, just a quick response, which one of all those people was the most down-to-earth guys? Because they're all titans. You talk about Titans of Direct Marketing, which is a product you created with a whole bunch of different marketers over time, which is an awesome product. But of all those people you worked with at Boardroom, which one was the most down-to-earth guy? And then which one would you say was kind of the most quirky?
So good question. The most down-to-earth and the most humble yet tenacious is Gary Bencivenga. Gary Bencivenga was a guy that he would write he had an 85 to 90% success rate when he wrote a package for you or, for your product. And the beauty of Gary Bencivenga is the day that he wrote the package and it became became the winner, was the day he tried to beat it. And he wouldn't leave it to another writer to beat it. He beat it himself with something brand new. And that kind of, that's something I've written about a lot, in terms of, it's the king is dead, long live the king. The control is your enemy. As soon as you get a control, that's the time you want to beat it. And Gary would be so tenacious, and you'd think that he would be so cutthroat and so arrogant and so ornery. And yet he was so down to earth and so humble, and he respected everybody he beat. He beat you, and then he would say, I'm so happy I beat him because he's so good. The guy, whether he's beating Jim Rutz or he's beating Gene Schwartz or he's beating whoever. And so I'd say that Gary Bencivenga would be the most, he would qualify as that. As far as the quirkiest, definitely Jim Rutz. Jim Rutz was, I'm still very good friends with his sister. She's in my mastermind as well. And I say this to her, so I know I can say it here too. He was crazy. I know He was just crazy, but, crazy like a fox, because he would try stuff in his promotions that no one else would try. I called him the guy who will index a 10 or a 300, meaning that if he's going against a control, he'll try something outrageous and he'll index like a 10, meaning that 1/10 of the response, like awful. But then he'll do something that was off the wall and he'll get like a 300% response from it. You don't understand why. And so by quirky, I mean, he would write stuff that, like, I remember he was looking for a bride. He looked for a Russian bride. He was looking for someone to marry. And he put out a space ad. It wasn't for the Russian bride, but it was a different one. But it was a space ad, and it said, "Damsel." He was dressed up as like King Arthur, and it was "Damsel wanted, distress optional." So it was, things like that, really quirky. I mean, he did one thing with us when he would use cartoons, like caricatures of famous people, and which was not usually the norm in the newsletter business that we were in and the book business we were in. And he wrote some control packages that were so off the wall and so incredible. So yeah, he'd be the quirkiest.
That's interesting to know. I wouldn't have known that. So one of the question that I mentioned before that I ask every guest is, what's something about you that people in the marketplace, maybe even people in your mastermind groups, that's probably where I want to go with this. What's something about you that even people in the mastermind groups, which you belong to, and you're in groups with Abraham and Kern and just anybody who's anybody, you're in these groups. What's something about you that they don't know, but you'd like us to know?
Some of them know it, but not all of them. And it's that I'm a baseball umpire. I wrote about it in my book, and I've written about it a lot. And I umpire varsity high school baseball. I umpire tournament Little League with my eye on getting to Williamsport for the Little League World Series. I've been to a World Series. I've been to 3 Eastern Regionals. I'd like to get there before I'm in a wheelchair. But I'm hoping to, and we need to, have baseball so that I can do it. So I'm a baseball umpire. The thing that I like to say about it, though, because one copywriter that I shared it with said to me, like, he basically said, why would anybody want to be an umpire? And that was kind of the question he asked. And I said, and I thought about it, and then I came up with it. I came up with a couple of reasons. One is that we all have to have things in our life that we're totally focused on outside of our core competence. Although I'm very competent umpire, but our core competence or our career or our passion projects and all that. So what umpiring does for me, when I'm working all day and then I go out on a baseball field and I have to call 300 pitches, balls and strikes, and get everyone right, that takes a focus that I can't have anything else on my mind. And so whether you do yoga, whether you meditate, whether you write, whatever you do, whether you paint, whatever you do to create focus, it does that for me, because I have to be so focused or else I'm going to get yelled at. And that's the other part of it. It's like you can make a mistake if you're painting and you'll say, oh, I have to clean that up. Hard to clean up a bad call in baseball. Someone's going to be yelling at you. So I like that pressure of that to be perfect. And you're never going to be perfect, but I'm close. But, because the umpire is always right. So I'm always right, even though some people think I might not be. And then the other piece, which was really interesting, when I started talking to this copywriter, I said, I think I like it because it's the kind of thing where you've got power, you've got the game in your hands, and yet if anybody finds out about you during the game, you're in trouble. Like, you have to be anonymous. You have to be like, you have to be like water behind the scenes. And then I compared it to customer service. I did a chapter. I told the story of umpiring in the customer service chapter in Over Deliver, because it's customer service is a marketing function. And the beauty of it, the customer service person, if they're doing a good job, you don't hear a thing. But as soon as something screws up in the order or complaints or troublemakers that are calling, now all eyes are on the customer service rep. Same as an umpire. And I love the fact that the best that you get as an umpire is nice game ump when you're done. If you get a nice game ump or they say, good job back there, my day is made, because nobody comes to the game to see the umpire. and yet you're in every pitch, you're in every play. And so that's what turns me on about it, which is not the kind of thing that turns on a lot of people. People want to be in the spotlight and then show off. I mean, I have a loud strike call and an umpire with a loud voice, but that's it. They have to see my competence. And if they don't see my competence, I'm dead. So I love it. And that I was able to relate it to direct marketing and customer service and fulfillment made it even more special. And then I went on to say, even if I don't get paid a lot to be an umpire, I say, pay your customer service rep on the phone, treat them right. When they're not making a mistake and they're doing 100% wonderful service, that's when you have to compliment them. And you have to really do that because it's such an important part of your operation. Keeping a customer is so much more valuable than getting a new one. And keeping a customer is all in the customer service and fulfillment.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'll just briefly mention this, that I lived in Omaha, Nebraska when I was much younger. I was in the military. I used to go to the College World Series and watch that. Yes. That's where they had that. And now that I've had my youngest daughter, she plays, well, now with COVID and stuff, things got kind of whacked. They canceled all the club soccer for a season, but high school still was in effect. But we traveled all over the country, and I have to tell you that I feel for you coaching or umpiring Little League. It would be much less stressful, much less demanding to umpire a college World Series game. You talked about the Little League World Series, or maybe even in the World Series, as having to deal with the parents of these Little League kids, especially if you made it to the Little League World Series. I mean, that is a ruthless blood sport. That's like a blood sport. To be an umpire in a Little League World Series would just be putting your life in your hands. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I think the parents always are the problem because they're living vicariously through their kids. But I'll tell you, when I do a varsity high school game, and I know guys that do varsity college, there's like a lot of things in those games that get like, it's sort of like the inside baseball where, the catcher will not say anything to you, but he'll brush his glove across the dirt to let his manager know that the ump blew it. And then they start yelling at you. The high school kids and the Little League kids aren't sophisticated enough to do that. So there's another level there that makes those games. It's a pressure packed thing to do. And again, why that copywriter said to me, why do you ever want to be an umpire? That's why he was saying it. But I love it. And I actually someone wrote to me recently. He was buying a book from me and he was on my website and he said, Brian, I have a deal for you. I noticed something on your website. The guy's a techie and an internet techie. And so a web techie. And he was offering his services to fix something on my website that I didn't know needed fixing. And in exchange for that, he didn't want to charge me. In exchange, he wanted me to coach his son, who's 12 years old, with a Zoom call on umpiring and rules.
What a cool deal.
So there are people that do know that about me because I've written about it. But I answered your question with that because, I'm sure your audience wouldn't have known it. And there are people in my mastermind that don't know it while some others do. But
all right, let me give a quick disclaimer. If you're listening right now and you're a tech person, do not go to Brian's website, look for problems, and then email him or call him and ask him to coach you on direct marketing in lieu of fixing his website. Let's talk about your book, Over Deliver. You got a copy of it with you handy?
Here it is. And here it is in Italian, which is cool. I spoke in Italy, and after I talked a lot about a lot of stuff in the book, and I met the best copywriter in Italy, and he has a company that translates like Dan Kennedy and other books. And after the event, he said, I want to translate your book into Italian. I set him up with my publisher, and he put it together really quickly.
So why'd you write the book? That's the question. What's the big overarching reason? Because listen, let me just say this real quick. I want to get this in. As you know, I only have guests on my show that I am absolutely 100% confident that you will get immense value more than the time you invest or the money you invest. This is not a book you just read. I'm going to put this book in the category of Schwartz's book, Breakthrough Advertising. This is a book that is a resource.
I don't think it's that, but thank you.
It's in the same category in the sense that it's a manual that I can refer back to over and over again. This is not a book you just simply read to be entertained. or to learn a thing or two. This is timeless principles that you're not going to find in pretty much any other books, all wrapped into one. I think this is just my personal opinion. You obviously probably don't care, but you didn't charge enough for the book. I mean, you definitely didn't charge enough. There's so much value jammed into this book, but the book is guaranteed. So buy the book, deploy what's in the book. You will generate multiples, not only of the time you invest, because you can always get more clients. You can always make more money. You can't get more time. Tremendous investment of your time. Tremendous investment of your time. Tremendous resource, the book. You'll benefit immensely from it. If you can't say that after you've done those things, email me at customerservice@kennewhouse.com. I will gladly and instantly reimburse you for the book. Brian, you and I don't have an affiliate relationship. I get nothing out of this. I'm doing this because I believe wholeheartedly. In fact, that's the only reason I have guests on my shows, because I believe in them. If I don't have the confidence that I can guarantee their work, I don't have them on my show.
That's very generous of you. Not just that you would refund the book, but more so that, putting it in the same sentence as Breakthrough Advertising, which to me is, the quintessential book on copywriting and marketing and
human behavior.
It's all about human behavior. It was written in 1966 and every word is 100% relevant. But that's Gene Schwartz. And he would also, he'd be up there in the humility category with Gary Bencivenga. But as far as why I wrote the book, it was interesting when I was writing my blog post every week for like 4 or 5 years. And I realized that I'm not a copywriter per se, but I was really enjoying writing, and I was telling stories from my career, and they weren't just, a stroll down memory lane. They actually all had lessons. I was able to relate a lot of marketing principles to the examples that I had throughout my career at Boardroom. And so my original thought was like, I'll take my blogs and I'll stick them in a book, and they'll just be one after another, like it would be a series of blogs. And I realized, and I talked to some people about that, and then I was on other podcasts and people were giving me advice. One guy said, no, you really want to get a developmental editor, which I didn't even know that they existed. I don't know what it was, but someone to take all of your blogs and work it into chapters with interstitial copy between the chapters. And that was the beginning of that I really wanted to write the book then, because now I could actually have a book that made sense and it wasn't just random blog posts. But I did have a lot of my blog posts put into the book, but I rewrote them for the book. And so I got a developmental editor, Laura Gale, who was amazing. We went through it. We got the 10 chapters. It was a great process. I recorded the book myself. I did the audio version in my own voice. When I did the book, I did the contract for the book, and the publisher said, I had to agree to an audio version. I added to the contract. I said, as long as I'm physically able and you can understand the way I talk, I want to do the audio version. Because I've read so many books of authors, current authors, who had a reader of their book, and there was so much autobiographical material in it, and I thought that was a crime, to have someone else read your book. Yeah. So that was like I had to have that in my contract that I had to read it, which means I had to do the work to read it, which made it difficult, but I did it. But the thing that I realized is that my book was released April 9th, 2019. On April 10th, I had a massive stroke, believe it or not.
Wow.
And the timing was interesting. And the reason I bring it up is not for anybody's pity or whatever. I'm just saying that's what happened. And I ended up, waking up in the hospital. I was paralyzed when I went down, but once I woke up, once they got the blood clot out, I can move my hands, I can move my legs, everything was fine. And I thought about it and sitting in the hospital room, and I said, okay, if I had died, what kind of footprint would I have left? And immediately I thought of the 2 books that I wrote, this Over Deliver and The Advertising Solution, which I wrote with Craig Simpson. And it didn't satisfy me. It was like, yeah, the book got all my thoughts down. It got my career down, but I have so much more still to do. I mean, I've written, in fact, one of the bonuses at overdeliverbook.com, where everybody should buy the book. Don't go right to Amazon. Go to overdeliverbook.com. But one of the 11 bonuses, amazing bonuses on that page that you get for free, was the lost chapters of Over Deliver, which were just the blog posts that I wrote since the book went to press. in like December of 2018. So then I just put, it's 140 pages of all my blog posts that I wrote since then. So I felt like my career was not just getting started, but I was getting started in this new career of writing and sharing and teaching. So it didn't satisfy me that would be my footprint, because that's what I thought going in. And I'm not a big fan of legacy, because legacy just talks about you being dead. I like a living legacy. I like to enjoy my legacy while I'm here. So then I thought about it and I said, the biggest footprint, given who I am and how I've run my career, is the overdeliverbook.com site, because that site is honoring all of my mentors, the people I stood on the shoulders of. And I related it to, I did a podcast once about this. And I said, yeah, it was the Overdeliver book page, not the book itself, because on that page, I have the testimonials from all the greats of direct marketing, Kennedy and Kern and Jeff Walker and, everybody who's alive. And then, so they're all my mentors, right? And then the stuff that I'm giving away is from Perry Marshall. He's not dead, but but then there are dead mentors like Gordon Grossman and Dick Benson. I have a PDF of both of their books, which are out of print, and I give a full PDF of both of their books as two of the bonuses. Jay Abraham.
I have spent upwards of 25 years working to put together the best swipe file I possibly could. And in one email, I got more value to add, like super awesome value to add to my swipe file than I've gotten in any single place ever, hands down. And probably within the last 5 years, nothing I've acquired has even remotely approached it.
Yeah, that's the
I'm surprised you're giving it away. I mean, it's your call to give away that stuff I'd be selling. This is stuff that I think, if it were me, I'd be throwing a price tag on this stuff and selling it all day long without effort. You're giving it away free with a copy of your book, which is, I think it dovetails perfectly with the title of your book.
Right.
Over Deliver.
And it's funny because you say that, because titling a book Over Deliver put a lot of pressure to over deliver on the bonuses. But that's one of 11 premium bonuses. It's called the Copywriter's Toolkit. I think it's like 400 pages of promotions going back to 1900. And someone's going to say, well, why do I want to look at a space ad or a direct mail piece from the 1920s or 30s? Well, you do, because you'll never be at a loss for a subject line of an email. I mean, I'm not saying steal everything, because stealing's a felony, but stealing smart is an art. And you will never be swipes, and the fact that that's why we connected so well when you invited me on this show, because, anybody who's a swipe file junkie is my kind of guy, because that, I've got a swipe file, up the wazoo here and in my computer as well, in my hard drive. And it's so useful in terms of everything that you do. And even if it's all direct mail and offline copy, who cares?
Human behavior is human behavior is human behavior. It does not change. I'm a doctor. I'm a retired chiropractor, and I'm telling you, I've learned more about human behavior writing copy and studying the greats of direct response and reading Brian's books and studying after Brian's work than I have ever in my formal education, getting a graduate degree. Human behavior doesn't change.
No.
I don't care what's going on in society. I don't care that we have smartphones now. I don't care that we have the internet. Human behavior does not change. It's ingrained in our DNA.
Absolutely.
That's the way it is.
And I would venture to say that anybody who went to a swipe file found a headline that was like a control headline from 1930, use it as a subject line if it's related to what you're writing about in an email. And I will guarantee that a lot of those are going to work extremely well. But you have to relate it to what you're doing. But now I know why I wrote the book, because, there are so many homages to all my mentors, all the people I've worked with, all the copywriters. And, I'm not saying some people say I don't give myself enough credit, but I'll get the credit. I got more than enough time to get the credit. But I want to make sure that, the people that have been involved in my career, and I would say this to anybody who has established a career based on the learnings of, the teachings of others, that you have to always call it out. The idea, I think it makes you look not just better, but it makes you look more robust when you give someone credit for teaching you something and taking credit for it.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question. I need you to take 60 to 90 seconds to answer because I want to get through a few of my really good questions that I have. So in the book, you said something, just a second ago, you talked about a great email subject line or using the swipe file to create something cool for an internet marketing campaign. A lot of people online today are bragging about they're the absolute best in the world at what they do. Well, everybody can't be the best in the world at what they do. And in the book, you made a comment that really resonated with me. You said, if you've done it, it ain't bragging. If we've done it and it's not bragging, what's the best way to go about sharing the fact that we're able to do something consistently versus like the wrong way? Give me an example of like the wrong way of doing it online.
Yeah, I mean, I find this in my mastermind groups a lot because, they're coming to me and say, Brian, you're the expert, do me. Tell me what to do. Tell me how I can do this promotion. Tell me how I can do it. And I find that I know I can give them really good advice. So I know that it won't be bragging because it'll be based on my experience. It'll be based on something that worked. But I try to preface it with, here's an idea, keep an open mind. It may not be the best idea. It could be the best idea, but it's based on results. It's based on something that worked. Maybe not even for me. It might be a client or someone else. And then we get into discussion. And because it's a mastermind, I mean, I have 60 people on Zoom on the call. I'll start asking people in the audience, what do you think of that idea? Because the thing is that another thing I said in my book is like, I never invented anything. However, I've been able to connect the dots on more stuff than most people. I've done it for 40 years. I haven't had 1 year's experience for 40 years. I've had 40 years of cumulative experience. So I've been able to connect the dots on a lot of stuff. And that's worth a lot to sharing with my masterminds or with my clients or whatever. But I think you have to go into it with, I'm going to put this out boldly. It'll sound like a brag. And I might even preface it. In some of this preface, I say, I'm not bragging because I did it. And this is what I did. What do you think? How can you improve it? Because the thing is, if you start with, you got to do, like I go to masterminds where I'm on a hot seat, right? And people are telling me what to do. And a lot of them are very experienced. They're giving me good advice, but they say it like it's the be all end all. Basically nothing is the be all end all. But I know I can start a conversation with anybody in marketing. That'll be a great place to start. We will get to a finish line that might be a lot of what I started with. It might not even look like what I started with, and it doesn't matter to me. So you have to also invest in your bragging, invest in your experience, there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance. And so you can't be arrogant, but you have to be confident, but you have to always keep an open mind and say, wow, that's a really good, improvement on what I just gave you. If you go into the conversation and say, I'm going to give you the best idea and you have to take it. And if you don't take it, you're an idiot, and that's so simple. It sounds simple, but that's the way I go at it. And if you go at it like that, you get so much more because then it's 1 + 1 = 3. Because then you have all the people coming in on your idea. And so that's the way I do it. I mean, some people criticize me for it because they say, Brian, you're not being bold enough. You're not taking responsibility for your ideas. You're not being, you're trying to give everybody else credit for your idea. I don't care about that. I just don't care about that. And the fact is that you get much more that way because I'm bringing in all of these things. Like I've done presentations that are all quotes of great people in marketing. And people make fun of me. Brian, you got any more quotes? I did 50 quotes. But the quote is where I was my springboard for telling a story about my career and do it. So so when people introduce me and they say, oh, Brian Kurtz, he mailed 1.5 billion pieces of direct mail in the last 20 years at Boardroom. Well, it's not bragging. I did it. I didn't lick every stamp, of course, but it's not bragging, but it's what I did. Now, what you did doesn't make you an expert automatically. And I guess that's the bottom line there. It doesn't make you an expert, but it gets you in the game of expertly giving your advice and then building on it with the people that you're building with. That's the way I would explain that.
All right. And so in the book, you obviously just a few minutes ago, you mentioned you gave over 500 different acknowledgments in the book. And so some of these quotes, we're obviously not going to get through all my questions, but these are important questions. But one of the things you said in the book about your friends, all these people that you're mentioning, not all of them, a handful of them is, you'd go out of your way and they wouldn't reciprocate, or they wouldn't, quote unquote, meet you halfway. You said, try to eliminate from your life the idea of meeting people halfway. And what I'd like you to do is take 60 to 90 seconds and tell us how that applies to our relationships with our clients, customers, and patients, and why it's absolutely critical to adopt this approach.
Yeah, I actually got that idea from the Landmark Forum, which was the reincarnation of Est. I always say Landmark Forum was Est, and they let you go to the bathroom. But but Landmark Forum talks a lot about the concept of 100-0, that you have to give 100% to zero. And I think I told it in the context in the book, the story of my high school friends. Like, my high school friends would not be necessarily my friends today. I have 10 of us from high school. We're still close friends, but I don't know that I would choose them as friends today, because we have so many different, but at that time in our lives, we have this history together that's incredible, and I don't want to lose them ever. So how do I not lose them when they're all lame about keeping in touch? And if I wanted to stand on ceremony and wait for them to call me first, I wouldn't have them in my life. So I have to give 100-0. Now, they've gotten better in their old age. Some of them, they reach out to me first, and I'm like, wow, maybe you're better than me now. But it doesn't matter, because if it's 80-20 or 90, it doesn't matter, because I want them in my life. If I have to extend myself a little bit more to have them in my life, and that could be with a friend, a client, anything. So it's basically giving 100% with no expectation of a return, and you get so much more that way. Now, some people would say that, I talk about in I think it's in the introduction or chapter 1, the book by Adam Grant, Give and Take, which is a great book, and it talks about givers, takers, and matchers. And the interesting thing in that book, it says, okay, so if you want to look at the most unsuccessful people in business, are they givers, takers, or matchers? A giver is a giver, a taker is a taker, a matcher is like, you quid pro quo, you do for me like I do for you. And you're thinking about it, of course, you say must be the takers are the least successful. It's actually the givers, because you give the wrong way, in Adam Grant's view, meaning that, you get taken advantage of, you become a chump, you give to people at your expense, and you don't get anything in return. Well, that's true for some things. And I think the 100-0 concept can go a little too far. And it takes a lot for me to write somebody off. But I think I've only written off, definitely in 40 years, it's less than 10 people. It's probably like 6 or 7 that I wrote off because they were such takers that it was just brutal. And I couldn't deal with it. But the other side of that was, so then Adam Grant says, well, who are the most successful people? They're also givers, but you have to give the right way. And for me, it's 100-0 within reason. I don't think Adam Grant agrees with that 100%, but he would understand why I go about it that way. And it served me well for 40 years. I'd rather err on that side than sitting there going, I'll meet you halfway, 50-50, you got to do for me. And it goes back to one of the great books. It's not a copywriter book, but it's really a great marketing book, and it's not even a marketing book, which is Influence by Robert Cialdini. It's one of the great books ever written, and it's copywriters just swear by it. And he's got the 7 principles of ethical influence. I keep it in my wallet. I have this card in my wallet. It's the principles of ethical influence. And number 1 is reciprocation. And reciprocation is you, then me, then you, then me. Be the first to give service, information, concessions. That's I took it a step further and said it's 100-0.
And Brian, let me just say this. He didn't have to do it, but Brian not only sent me a Eugene Schwartz book that is a $200 book on his website, because he knows I'm a big fan, and it's a copy I didn't have. He sent me the book that he wrote with Craig Simpson, And he sent me the workbook that went with the Schwartz book. Just immense value. And he didn't have to do any of that because that wasn't going to be the topic of our conversation on the podcast today. It's not a case of semantics where he's telling you, hey, do as I say, not as I do. This is a guy who's living this out in his life. He doesn't know me from Adam. We made a connection, and the fact that he sent me, I don't know, $250 worth of materials absolutely free, I was amazed by that, and it really impacted me.
Yeah, it's an impulse for me because, you had already reached out to me. We were going to do the podcast together. I mean, I had one today. It happens every day. I had one today. Guy wrote to me. He goes, I ordered breakthrough advertising from your site. I ordered it a week and a half ago. It should have gotten here already because we send priority mail in the US, and he didn't have it yet. And so my assistant looked up the order. She said, Brian, I can't find it. I said, send him another book, Federal Express today. No questions asked. Now, is that because I want to be a sport? No, it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
I think that, and that's why customers, and that guy, I wasn't doing it for any other reason that because he deserved it, because I screwed up or something screwed up in my system. But will that guy buy the other book someday? Maybe. If he doesn't, that's fine. I'm not expecting it. No expectation. But I'm doing it because I want him to be a lifelong customer of mine.
Right.
I want him to join my mastermind one day. If he doesn't, that's fine. He doesn't have to.
Hear my question out. I'm going to put the pressure on you here. So you listed 5 key principles, and I have to look at my notes to read them all. 5 key principles as it relates to being successful in direct marketing. Number 1, marketing is about psychology. 2, there's nothing wrong with shortcuts. 3, use what's already working. And by the way, guys, he goes into great depth on each of these topics, but I'm going to get to my question. 4 is swipe files are your secret weapon. We talked a little bit about that. 5, that new thing might not be so new. So here's the question that I want to get to. So obviously the person listening to the show today wants to be more successful with direct response marketing. They want to be able to deploy it in their business successfully, get better ROI on their marketing campaigns, make their business more profitable and successful. If I had to turn up the heat right now and say, Brian, you can only choose 3 of these right now, the 3 most important. I know they're all important, they're all critical, but I'm going to force you to pick 3. Which 3 are most important and why?
Wow.
I'd say swipe file is one of them. That's for me personally.
Yeah, swipe file is definitely one of them because you and swipe everything. Swipe emails. You see an email you like, swipe it. And by swiping it, just save it and even come up with a classification system. These are for emails, and these are for space ads, and these are for search things. But keep track of everything that you receive in your mailbox, in your inbox. That really makes you vibrate. That's what Marty Edelston, the guy who founded Boredom, he used to say, I want copy that makes me vibrate. I got some people who said they didn't like that, but I like it. So swipe files, definitely. I think the last one, that new thing might not be so new, is an important concept. Another way to phrase that is Facebook didn't invent everything. And I tell a story, I think, around that, which is that if you can, and I'm not saying the olden days were better. I'm not saying, walk down memory lane and talk about the great days of direct mail and how terrible marketing is today. Not at all. Marketing is great today. State-of-the-art marketing is great. My thing is that if you see something that someone is saying, I got tons of examples. People are saying native ads, native ads are hot. Native ads were advertorials in the 1960s in newspapers. They're called something different, but what I did when I started seeing native ads on display ads on the internet, I went down, I started developing a swipe file of all kinds of tear sheets and from newspapers and space ads and there are these ads that the 3-legged golfer that John Carlton wrote. They look like an article, but it's an advertisement for whatever. And so I started really studying that, and I feel that I became much better at doing it online because I studied the classics of the previous generations. I'm not saying take a walk down memory lane for the sake of walking down memory lane. I'm saying that, if you can get a bedrock of fundamentals and things that you have in your head all the time, that's like my mission in life. I'm the bridge that connects those fundamentals to everything that's state of the art in marketing today, how it applies, how it doesn't apply, and again, as you said earlier, human behavior is human behavior. So most of it applies. And so, don't be fooled by the great funnels that people are creating. I used to just cross-sell and upsell. And I used to, I had contact strategy, which that's not a term you hear today. But someone who bought a book from me paid for it. As soon as they paid for it, it triggered a mailing for one of our newsletters that was related to the book. Is that a funnel? Yeah, it's a funnel. But, so I think that the new thing might not be so new is really just to keep in mind that marketing was not invented when the internet came along. It's been around a long time. And as you said, the swipe file with overdeliverbook.com is 400 pages of direct mail ads, and
plus all the videos and all the other stuff that you had on there. That's crazy. But there was all those videos you gave me access to, and all the
yes. I got 19 keynote speeches that Jay Abraham has made.
I think wasn't Halbert on there as well? Gary Halbert is on there.
Halbert is on the other for my first book.
Okay,
that's one that I have for the legendsbook.com, which is the book that Craig will talk about. Let him talk about that book, but we have a swipe file on that one as well.
All right, let me ask you two questions. What's the best piece, the single best piece of marketing advice you ever got, and who'd you get it from? That's one question. Who gave it to you?
God, I have so many. God, I'm just going to pick one. I have hundreds, literally hundreds. But the one that popped into my head, because I thought of the biggest ideas that I've had in my career, I think it was from Adolf Auerbacher, who was the publisher at Meredith Magazines. He ran Better Homes and Gardens magazine and Ladies Home Journal, and he was retired when I started working with him. He was my judgment consultant, had the best judgment of anybody I ever met. And he just said something very simple. He said, follow the anecdotal evidence. So that ties into that the new thing might not be so new, but it basically, that advice and a little insomnia in 2014 created a $300 million franchise for me. And why I say that, and it's a blog post I wrote, how insomnia created a $200 million business just on TV, is that the anecdotal evidence was that we could do an infomercial for one of our books. And then I saw an infomercial for a single book. That's the anecdotal evidence that it can work. Then I got all the details, and I mean, it's a longer story than that, and it's got a lot of details. But I'd say that would be one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got that, took me to new heights, just by a simple, flick of the finger saying, follow the anecdotal evidence. But, I have so many, and another big one, which I opened chapter 10 of Over Deliver with, was Marty Edelston. He had an expression. He said, life is long. And you have the subtitle of my book on the board there, build a business for a lifetime, playing the long game in direct response marketing. Playing the long game is about knowing that life is long. It's not, look, it's a play on life is short. And we know life is short. That's the easy way out. But life is long, meaning that you got to be in it every day. You've got to build relationships. You got to build relationship capital so that you've got these deep relationships that you want to go 100-0 with because you want to do for them because they've done for you and all of that, reciprocation. So it's as simple as life is long that would take me in so many different directions during my career. And again, a simple quote, but.
So obviously, Brian, if we were to cover your entire book, we'd be here for a couple of weeks doing this interview, like grinding it out hours and hours and hours. Not possible. But in light of the limited amount of time we have, what's the one question about your book, Over Deliver, today that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
We wouldn't have had enough time to go through it, and you did a really good job. So we got to some of the basics, but the middle of the book, which is chapters 4, 5, and 6. If you look at that, That's the three-legged stool of marketing. Chapter 4 is about lists or audience. Chapter 5 is about offer. And 6 is about the creative. And I talk about the 41-39-20 rule, which was really the 40-40-20 rule. But I made it the 41-39-20 rule because I think lists is more important. But just quickly, that rule is that the success of a direct marketing campaign depends 40% on the list, 40% on the offer, 20% on the creative. I made it 41-39-20 because it's 41% list, 39% offer, 20% creative. And the other piece of that is that it's not saying that creative is half as important. It's just saying that creative is not as important. It's not important. It's the least important until it's not. Meaning that if you get the list and the offer dialed in, then the creative becomes the most important. But you don't start with the creative, because if you have great creative going to the wrong list with the wrong offer, you get 0 orders. And if you go to a perfect list with the best offer, a terrible list, a non-targeted list with a mediocre offer and the best copy you can get, you'll get no orders. The opposite, great list, great offer, terrible creative, you'll make money and you'll get orders. But you have to put all three, and it's a three-legged stool. So,
just to share quickly, I wouldn't have believed this had I not seen it with my own eyes, but probably 10 years ago, I got a dentist. Dentist is a new client, totally jaded against marketing, but this goes to your point. This doctor, I couldn't believe it. I actually didn't believe it until he proved it to me. He spent over $100,000 on the creative, on the direct mail campaign for his dental practice, for high-end dental work, to go out in Portland, Oregon. He got 0 patients because the message was wrong, the market that they targeted was wrong, the whole thing was wrong, which jaded him. And thankfully, we were able to help him after that. But I would have never. I'm like, why didn't you test first?
Marketing stuff sucks.
Why didn't you test this before you went all in? He said because they promised me it would work. They had a great reputation. I'm like, I can't imagine giving anybody even 10 grand on a marketing campaign to just mail it. You talked about the pyramidization in the book. You talk about, you got to test first. And so I wanted to add that in because it just I've never forgotten that's the profound stupidity of, Dan Kennedy used to talk about going in the bathroom and lighting $100 bill and burning it and flushing it down the toilet or whatever. Well, this was $100,000 this guy did that with. And I just, chapters 4, 5, and 6, actually chapter 5 was my favorite because the offer for me was the thing that really I was just magnetized to that, but it's an awesome book. Okay. What about your business? How can we find out more about, you got to buy the book.
And buy it at overdeliverbook.com, not because it's more expensive or it's still $17 on Amazon either way. But you go there first. You'll push a button to go to either Barnes & Noble or it's on the site. You go buy the book. You come back to that site. You put in your name and your email. You get on my list, which is a wonderful list. I don't do affiliates. I only sell educational products, and it's all content. As I said, I did the blog posts after it's basically my book continued. And then you get these 11 bonuses that are outrageous. It's the lost chapters, it's the swipe file, it's Dan Kennedy's swipe file when he spoke at Titans of Direct Response, which is a unique swipe file. Every Gary Bencivenga bullet that's ever been printed allowed me to create a PDF of everything that he's ever written online. There's a video of a day I did with Perry Marshall. There's the Jay Abraham stuff is amazing. And then the 2 direct mail books are fantastic. PDFs, full PDFs of Gordon Grossman's book and Dick Benson's book. And go to overdeliverbook.com. You'll get on my list. You'll get the book and you'll get all those bonuses. If you just want to go to my site and opt in, briankurtz.net. Everything on that site, you have how to work with me, my blog, all my past blogs are on there. I have a lot of free content on the site. You don't have to spend a dime, and you can wander around my site and have fun. And if you get on my list, you'll become part of my online family, as I call it, and you'll get my blog post every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah,
that's where you remind me so much of Gary in that respect that my inbox is not being spammed with garbage constantly. Benzivenga's bullets were good like that because once a week, man, that's it. Just a helpful email once a week. You knew it was coming. You weren't hit with 50 offers every day. Buy now.
I mean, I do launches for my masterminds, but I do those once or twice a year. But I'm not, and I have great resources. I have breakthrough advertising, but I do all that in the PS because the emails are all content. It's all stuff from my career, things I'm thinking about. In fact, I just created a welcome series of like the top emails from 2020 during COVID, and I was mapping out like a series that people, if they were just coming on my list, what I would want them to read because, the most useful information that I could provide, and then inviting them to give their opinions or give me some ideas or whatever. Because I'm not the be all end all. I just have ideas and I want to share them, and I want to be shared with, I want the people on my list or in my online family to share back with me.
Well, listen, I certainly appreciate you being on the show today. And I mean, I would love to have you back at some point down the road. It's been absolutely incredible and an honor for me, certainly. I hold you
honor for me too.
Professionally in the highest regard. The work you've accomplished, the contributions you've made are just enormous. You already know that, but certainly I want to acknowledge that. And again, thank you for your generosity and your kindness, not only for doing the show, but sending those books to me. And you didn't have to do that. And certainly, it meant a lot to me to get that stuff from you. So it was very kind. And anyway, it's been great. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it too, Ken. And, go forth and multiply. We all have to go forth and multiply. That's all we have to do.
As I mentioned at the conclusion of last week's episode with Steve Olsher, I've discovered that building a podcast you can use to bring high-value new clients into your business is one of the most effective marketing strategies I've ever discovered. And as with every strategy I deployed to get clients now, the Profitable Podcast Blueprint is built on the foundation of direct response marketing. And over the last 4 years, we've had many conversations about how you can use direct response marketing to get clients now, increase sales, and grow your business. A great episode that comes to mind is number 329, 7 elements of high converting websites. How making 7 small tweaks to your website can supercharge your results, allowing you to effortlessly attract high value clients, sell more stuff, and make your business more profitable. That was one of my occasional solo episodes where I talked about how to build a website that attracts traffic and generates tons of opt-ins for your business. And on that episode, I went into detail on some of the key elements that you want to have included in your website, all based on direct response marketing. So again, you can attract more of your perfect prospects and convert them into paying clients. Episode 329 is where you can find details for that. I'd also recommend a 2-part series I did with legendary direct response copywriter and marketing expert Bob Bly on episodes 322 and 323, titled Direct Response Copywriting Legend and Bestselling Author Bob Bly's new book, The Big Book of Words That Sell Makes Creating Winning Facebook Ads, Marketing Campaigns, and Sales Presentations Easier Than Ever. Things that used to be difficult to create. On those episodes, Bly shows you how to structure direct response ads and, more importantly, reveals powerful direct response copywriting secrets you can use to create marketing that is literally magnetic and irresistible to your perfect prospects and clients. It's a wonderful complement to today's conversation. Episodes 322, remember, it's a 2-part series with Bob Bly for that. All those conversations you can find on the kennewhouse.com website. And before wrapping up, I want to quickly mention that we're in the process of creating a free membership for you where you're going to be able to access the entire library of conversations searchable by topic since 2017. When you become a member on kennewhouse.com, you'll have instant access to my own personal library, the book notes, the highlights that I've captured from Brian Kurtz's book, Over Deliver, and you'll also have access to the other books I've featured on the show over the last several years, plus access to a weekly strategy guide that'll come into your inbox every Wednesday. The guide will feature all the links we mention on every show that links to books, resources, also other podcast episodes, as well as the most effective strategy we covered on that week's episode. Additionally, the guide will contain other articles online that I found that I think will be useful to you. So be sure to listen for the announcement when we launch the new free membership portal we're creating for you on kennewhouse.com. And in addition to all that I've mentioned, remember, the first 100 subscribers will get a free digital copy of the updated version of my book, Profitable Again, as well as a copy of my newest book, Profitable Podcast Blueprint. And speaking of direct marketing legends, next week I'm having a conversation with the legendary Craig Simpson, co-author with today's guest, Brian Kurtz, of the book, The Advertising Solution. Simpson also co-authored a book, The Direct Mail Solution, with mean old Dan Kennedy. Yes, it was mean old Dan Kennedy he wrote that book with. But listen, Craig Simpson is considered by most direct marketing gurus, including myself, to be the world's leading authority on using direct mail, which has made a tremendous resurgence since the onset of the new COVID economy. So join me for a conversation next week with Craig Simpson, where we're going to discuss more on direct response marketing, direct mail, and how you can use these powerful tools to get clients now. Yes, even in the heart of the new COVID economy, to get clients now and make your business more profitable. So have a great week. I'll see you guys next Monday on the show. Bye-bye.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.